Dear friends, welcome. And now we are starting the international session of this first regional forum for sustainable development. I'm proud to welcome my friends and colleagues from many different important European regions and newly welcome our web guests. And let me welcome also the chair of this session, Giuliana Ferraino, important journalist of our main Italian newspaper, Corriere della Sera. But first of all, I would address my welcome to my colleagues. So Mrs. Sophia Howe from Wales, Future Generation Commissioner, Mrs. Liliane Lucchesi from Bourgogne, Franche-Comté region, and a representative of the EUSAL French presidency in 2020, Mrs. Virginie Fanner, regional councillor of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, Mrs. Marta Subirà Irroca, Secretary for Environment and Sustainability of Catalonia, Mrs. Arantxa Tapia, Minister for Economic Development, Sustainability and Environment of the Basque Country, and President of Regions for Sustainable Development Network. And last but not least, my good friend Franz Untersteller, Minister of the Environment, Climate Protection and the Energy Sector of Baden-Württemberg. So many important, prominent leaders of sustainability in Europe. And the issue of this session is to share our experience, as we usually do, to learn each other, to understand better what we are doing and what we can do better. But let me say that this is, in a sense, Europe in a screen, but a different idea of Europe, the Europe that I prefer, the Europe, the bottom-up Europe, the Europe made by regions and territories, bottom-up, not just the Europe coming top-down from the Brussels bubble, the European Commission, and so on. We would be protagonists of this process towards sustainable development, and we as regions are aware of the important role we can play in this process. Our perspectives look to 2030 agenda of the United Nations, but we know that the goals of the 2030 agenda will take ground at regional and local level. And we are closer to the level where action are more likely able to produce measurable results in a more transparent, responsive, and inclusive process. This is the role, the task of the regions. Localizing sustainable development goals in an integrated territorial approach and in a perspective of a multi-level governance. We are asking for a better multi-level governance at European level, aware of the role that we can play in this process. This is the starting point, the first starting point of our session. The second starting point is that we are aware that that 2030 is a close deadline, but there is still a long way to go. According to the Global States and Regions annual disclosure, which represent the climate results and targets for subnational government, well, from one side, regions are more ambitious than the G20 countries, hitting a decarbonization rate of 6.2% annually against 3% declared as national determined contribution. But on the other hand, the last report of OECD and European Committee of the Region show us that the report named the key contribution of cities and regions to sustainable development show us a lack of awareness, support, capacities or trained staff, and difficulty to prioritize the SDGs over other agendas. So in the middle of this frame of possibilities, opportunities, and problems and concerns stay our experiences, and I'm sure that we have the political will and the commitment to give our contribution. Regions have the knowledge, the capacity, the innovation to play a key role in the new way of development, the way to a sustainable development for our future and the future of our territories. Thank you so much, and I give the floor to Giuliana Ferraino to chair our session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is my turn to welcome everybody to the first Regional Sustainable Development Forum. But first of all, let me tell you that today we have not only achieved, but exceeded one of the goals of the Agenda 2030, because today we have 5 women in my panel, and with a moderator, we're 6. So we are a big majority, and so this will be a terrific panel, and I'm sure that Untersteller will have fun as well, and will enjoy his views. So as Mr. Cattaneo said, this session will discuss what region can do for sustainable development. So we want not only showcase experiences, but also see what are the institutional instruments to implement a sustainable development, what are the law and regulation that help to achieve this objective, what are the campaigns to promote and communicate to society about these themes, and finally, we want to emphasize the value of partnership in achieving a sustainable development, whether it is in terms of dialogues among regions, as we're doing, but also with the stakeholders at the local level, at a global level. So, because we have a very intensive program, let me start right away. And I will start with Mrs. Howler. And so you are the leader, the commissioner of Future Generation for Wales. So this is a very ambitious mandate, because what you decide today will determine the interest and the future of tomorrow's citizen. So what are the policies, the strategies and tools that help you to have and decide effective policy in order to achieve a sustainable development in Wales?
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning. And here in Wales, we are the only country in the world to have legislated for sustainable development. So in 2015, our national parliament passed the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. It does a number of things. The overarching principle of the Act is that it requires all of our public institutions, so our health institutions, our local authorities, our national public bodies, and significantly the Welsh Government itself, to take decisions in a way which meet today's needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And it sets out 7 national wellbeing goals, which were devised through a conversation with the citizens of Wales, where we asked them, what is the Wales you want to leave behind to your children and your grandchildren? And we looked at what they said, and we looked at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which were being devised at the same time. And we came up with these 7 national wellbeing goals, which focus on preventing ill health, which focus on a low carbon economy, which focus on cohesive communities, restoring nature and biodiversity, and a number of other areas. And then the government bravely, I think, legislated to appoint an independent commissioner, so that's me, to hold them to account on how they're implementing this legislation. And the power of having someone whose role in law is to be the guardian of the interests of future generations, I think is really significant in terms of that statutory institution being able to scrutinise and call out policies where the wrong decisions may be being taken, and also work with these institutions to help them do better for future generations.
And this is a very, very important job. So I'm glad they picked a woman for that, because we know that a woman is a mother, and mothers tend to look after children and before themselves. But let me ask Madame Faner a question. Madame, from Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, that is one of the largest region in France. They combine a very different geographical, sociological, economic, and cultural area. So does sustainable development need a different approach to a diversified territory, or there's a single...
Vous m'entendez?
The Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region is characterized by its diversity in many respects. 70,000 square meters of an area equivalent to that of Ireland, and it has 8 million inhabitants. It is the second most populated region in France. 67% of our territory is located in mountains, and 2 rivers cross it, Loire and Rhône. It is also the first touristic region in France, and it is the first industrial region in France, the second exporting region after Paris. 65,000 companies are created each year, and it is a region that welcomes industrial international important companies such as Michelin, Limgrain, Biomérieux, and others. Still, it is also the first French region for organic agriculture in number of operators. For such a vast and diversified territory like the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, it's an imperative to articulate both a coherent and long-term vision for the entire territory and to take into account specific territorial and regional local actors. The region at the regional level, under its regulatory powers in the field of territory planning, has led the development of a regional plan for sustainable development and equality of the territories, a true sustainable development strategy towards 2030. This regional plan and the reference document about energy, and it's a reference document about energy, environment, land use planning, waste management, and transport. And it is for us a forward-looking and integrative plan. It's also a prescriptive plan and integrative, which means that everyone, local and sub-regional level, must respect this regional plan. It was adopted by the Regional Assembly in December 2019 at the end of 3 years of working consultation with the state services and the actors of the territory. This consultation takes place, is widely organized on the ground with local elected partners, associations and companies within the framework of territorial meetings. Such consultation is also organized by a team with resource actors and experts from state institutions and state agencies, but also from civil society. This consultation is both a strength and one of the specificities of the realization of this plan. The Regional Plan for Sustainable Development and Territorial Equality makes it possible to articulate the regional long-term vision in connection with thematic, international and community commitments such as the Kyoto Protocol, the Energy and Climate Pact of the European Commission and the Paris Agreement. It also makes it possible to guarantee that taking into account of local specificities within a framework of coherence, since at local level the local urban plans must take into account this scheme and be compatible with its orientations. At the territorial level, many support tools for the region exist. For example, in the field of energy, village power stations are very relevant example of a model of renewable energy production combining participation of local collectivities and communities and local population, the production of economic benefits for the territory, the respect for the built heritage landscape, and more generally for the environment. In more concrete terms, our goal is to develop renewable energies on a territory made up of different municipalities sharing the same project and the same goals from the landscape perspective. Our territory is equipped and it has a specific environmental aim so that all stakeholders can meet in an easy way and work together. These stakeholders are called centrales villageoises, local communities based on energy efficient goals, among others. We have also important activities developed by other stakeholders. We support communities. This is a key factor, and we want these stakeholders to contribute in the financing of this project. This project goal is to be self-sufficient, and many other French regions would like to implement our model to speed up our situation and also to increase by 54% the production of renewables in line with the UN goals of environmental reduction of 2030. The goal is also to produce new partnership projects to produce renewables. 163 projects have been implemented over a period of 5 years from Sun Power. From another perspective, the Green and Blue contract is another tool. It's one of the tools of our regional agreement with green and blue train and water corridors. It is a specific tool within the region on a local level developed with stakeholders. This contract allows the realization of a long-term action plan of 5 years term identified by the region to allow the implementation of railway infrastructures and other education pathways. It's a double guarantee contract. On one side, it considers green and blue trains, and it's also a guarantee of funding for stakeholders because public partners are supporting the action. So specific actions on a local level allow to have a balanced implementation of the goals of different stakeholders in the environmental continuity. 17 contracts have been implemented. Thank you very much.
Probably I need to interrupt you, but there will be a second round of questions in which you can keep going. Unfortunately, we have a lot of guests and we want to give each some time, but you will have a second round of intervention. Thank you very much. So from France, let's move to Spain, to Mrs. Subira. I know that in 1998, the Catalan government created an advisory council for sustainable development. According to this experience, could you please tell us or recommend one effective tool to implement and possibly one fruitless experience or strategy that we should avoid? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all. I am very happy to be here with you. I would like, first of all, to thank Assessore Cataneo, a very good friend of Catalonia, for inviting me to take part on such distinguished panel with so many women. It's really a pleasure. It's an honor to be here with you today. So the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic have meant that this year we are forced to meet virtually. Even though we cannot be together in Lombardy, this meeting is a true reflection of the global scale of local and regional action as we are connecting from different parts of Europe with a view to strengthening our joint commitment to sustainable development. The impossibility of gathering physically is inconsequential compared to the challenges we face. Thousands of people have died from COVID-19 across the world, and the pandemic, which is still out of control, will have severely negative impacts on the SDGs. We are more aware than ever that we live in a highly interconnected world 2020 is a year that will be remembered for the dramatic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, yet is also the year in which we keep up on the path of sustainability. As a global society, we have seen that local actions have global consequences. Not only can one disease to cripple all our communities, it is possible for that to occur because of the current climate emergency, long-lasting violent conflicts, or skyrocketing inequality. And indeed, as you were saying, in Catalonia, the Advisory Council for Sustainable Development has played an important role in disseminating environmental values and promoting the culture of sustainability within Catalan society. Over 20 years ago, the government of Catalonia made a pledge to sustainability, creating this advisory board, and then almost 5 years ago to the Agenda 2030 and to localizing the SDGs. To start with, the Advisory Council for Sustainable Development of Catalonia published the report, the 2030 Agenda, Transform Catalonia, Improve the World, identifying the challenges to be addressed in order for the SDGs to be met. The government also conducted an open participatory process with a view to drafting our own national agreement for implementing the SDGs. This participatory process yielded the contents of the National Agreement for the 2030 Agenda in Catalonia and established a broad consensus among many stakeholders. The National Agreement gave rise to a shared vision on how Catalonia can contribute to achieving the SDGs. It also outlined the roles and commitments of the different stakeholders within our society. In September 19, the National Plan for the Implementation of the 2030 Agenda was adopted. This included 920 commitments associated with regional and sectorial regulation, with the planning framework and with the government action plan. To monitor and assess the degree of compliance with the SDGs, the 2019 Annual Statistical Action Programme incorporated the feasibility study of a framework of indicators in the official statistics, taking the Eurostat as a reference. Likewise, to follow up the progress of the national plan, a technical commission consisting of 13 representatives from different ministries was created. This reports annually to an interministerial commission which holds the political leadership. A progress report of the implementation of the SDGs in Catalonia is expected to be presented by the end of this year. These are some tools and initiatives that we have found to be successful. And as regards the strategy to be avoided, I would suggest maintaining intellectual and policy silos. This is one of the main barriers to localizing the SDGs. In other words, and expressed in positive terms, ensuring policy coherence and full coordination among different ministries is vital to the progress to the Agenda 2030. Local and regional governments are doing a remarkable job in localizing the 2030 Agenda in their communities, as Assessore Cataneo pointed out before. Networks such as CGLU, Orufogar, and Regions 4 within the Global Task Force have been very successful in highlighting this work, and we are grateful for that. However, much more must be done in order to truly configure a new global governance system that can deliver on SDGs. Without further global devolution on competences and funding, local and regional governments cannot fully play their part in achieving the SDGs. I would very much encourage the same recipe for truly multi-level governance, devoting efforts to ensuring policy coherence and coordination and cooperation among all levels of government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I want to turn to Germany and ask a question to Herr Untersteller. Guten Tag. So, sustainability strategy. Hello. Sustainability strategy of Baden-Württemberg began in 2007. Could you tell us what tools have been designed in your ministry to achieve to make sustainability a key factor in your government and administrative action? And if I may, because Baden-Württemberg is home to the most famous car companies, yesterday we heard that UK will ban, starting 2030, sale of gas and diesel cars. So how do you address the problem? Because I know that Stuttgart, the city of Stuttgart, wanted to ban as well diesel car. So you have a very tough job. So could you please tell us what are your tools in order to achieve these goals of sustainability? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juliana, for this question, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues from other regions in Europe. First, I would like to thank my good friend Raffaele Cataneo for inviting me to this Congress. That's right, Baden-Württemberg is one of the most important regions for the car industry. 340,000 people are working in this sector, and it's necessary that we realize a transition, a big transition for the next years to change the technologies, to electric cars, to hydrogen cars and others. And that is one of the biggest questions where we should have the solutions for the next years. Also that that we will have the jobs I talked about, 340,000, also for the future, for the next generation. Sustainability takes stage in the 2016 coalition agreement of the government of Baden-Württemberg. And since then, sustainability has to be the central decision-making criterion for the actions of the government and the administration. No matter if we talk about strategies, campaigns, support programs, or legal regulations, sustainability has to be considered from the very beginning. And in order to change for the better, it is important to know where you stand. And that's why we have introduced a system for monitoring and controlling with a long-term and short-term perspective. The first component is the long-term monitoring. And with this long-term monitoring, we observe so-called status indicators of sustainable development at the level of the whole region. Information on the development and evaluation of the indicators is published in the indicator report, and citizens can see how the indicator is developing with the help of a traffic light system. And if data is available for the whole of Germany, it is also possible to check where Baden-Württemberg stands. The second component is our sustainability report, and it enables short-term monitoring for the ongoing activities of the state government and follows a management approach. The ministries set goals for their policy areas that they want to achieve in the coming 5 years, and also make transparent which concrete measures they intend to use to achieve these goals. The follow-up report then looks at which goals have been achieved or were not achieved, and which goals are to be updated and which new goals are to be pursued. Both monitoring processes are interlinked in such a way that the ongoing activities contribute to a favorable development of the status indicators in the medium term. In 2014, Baden-Württemberg was the first federal state in Germany to establish such a sustainability report. Until then, mainly companies had produced sustainability reports, and the second sustainability report for Baden-Württemberg has recently been published. Baden-Württemberg has also introduced a sustainability check for all regulations, from law initiatives to administrative regulations level. We try to check the social, the economic, and the ecological effects for a project for the future. And we are also trying to detect and solve conflicting objectives from the very beginning. Citizens can also contribute to legislation via an internet portal and comment on both the regulations themselves and the sustainability assessment. In short, these tools have two goals. First, to establish a management approach for sustainability in government and administration. And secondly, to make our actions transparent for the people. For one thing is clear, sustainability can only succeed if we are in this together. We have already achieved a great deal, but there is still a long way to go.
Thank you very much. This is really important. Sustainability can only be achieved if we're in this together. And now we go back to Spain, but in a different region, in a northern region of the Basque countries. And I will ask Mrs. Tapia, that is a very powerful woman, because by statute, Mrs. Tapia, you are empowered with the competency that goes from economic to environment to sustainability. So what is your vision of the sustainable development and how are you implementing this vision to achieve this goal in the Basque country? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to be here with you. It's a real pleasure for me. And I have to say that we have just started this legislature in September. And I have to say that my ministry, the department, is a real innovative department. And why not say challenging department? We consider in the Basque country that sustainable development is a cornerstone of our public policies, because without it, there's no future for our planet. So in this sense, we have been working with the challenges, with the priorities that are nowadays on our agenda in the previous period. But with the COVID crisis, we have to say that these challenges are not only maintained, but they have been accelerated. So in addition to having a direct impact on our lives, private lives, social lives, and of course in our economy, COVID has caused an acceleration of all the economic, technological, and social trends. And we have to tackle with them as we were doing before the crisis, but accelerating all the digital, energy, and climate transformations that were already part of our lives. But nowadays, our work is enormous. So we have been working with the 2030 agenda for the Basque country, totally aligned with the United Nations agenda. But we consider that industry, economic growth, technology, new energies, and management of the climate change, of course, are the engines to achieve fair and sustainable growth. They are the main issues we have to work with. So in this scenario that it is totally uncertain, we have to rethink. It's an opportunity to rethink our economic model, our competitiveness model, because we have to tackle with the crisis, with the nowadays crisis, but we have the opportunity to rebuild, to renew our competitive model in order to be a model for the future, for the long term, and to work with our society to find a welfare model that will be more than the one we had before. So when we work, when we talk about this kind of sustainable development, we are talking about job creation. We are talking about leading the energy transformation, about R&D, about climate neutrality, and about internationalization. And why not about food, rural and coastal development. So we think that our roadmap, trying to tackle with the challenges of the European Green Deal, of course, is related to a green economy model a green strategy, but above all, our model is a growth model. It's based on modern, of course, resource efficient model and a competitive economy. It's based on growth. So growth and sustainability have to be working all together. This is our competitive model, and this is our say Basque Green Deal. So this is the model we are working with, and this is innovative and totally fully challenging for our department, and we are totally involved in trying to tackle with it. Thank you.
Really interesting, because growth is at the base of sustainability. In fact, without growth, we can't have sustainability, and vice versa. Sustainability actually make a country more competitive. Mrs. Tapia just explained. To do this, if we can't connect with Madame Lucchesi, we'll turn back to her and we'll ask her the question about Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region. Let's go to a second round of questions with our guest. And I will then go to, okay, there we go. To Mrs. Tapia and Mrs. Howe. So Mrs. Tapia, you are the President of Regions for Sustainable Development. That is a global network that includes 41 regional governments for 21 countries in 4 continents and participate to the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda. And Mrs. Owe, instead you are the chair of another network, the Network of Institutions for Future Generation, where a methodology of sharing best practices in areas of interest has been developed. So we could say that interregional cooperation is a keystone for implementation the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, it is indeed the 17th and last goals, partnership in achieving the goals. Could you please tell us about this experience of partnering and sharing knowledge and experience in order to achieve sustainability goals? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have to say that this panel undoubtedly shows the importance of regional leadership in the implementation of sustainable development goals, and the impact of collaboration between regions is already demonstrated. Regional governments are playing a key role in the deployment of international sustainable development, and this kind of, regional network could be not only for reinforcing how we establish, how do we act on our regions, but to contribute to increase all the political commitment collectively. It is something more than a regional commitment. It is a global commitment, and working together, it could be better tackled in our opinion. For instance, the latest report of the Commission for the Environmental, Climate Change and Energy of the Committee of the Regions says that about more than 70% of the climate change mitigation actions and more than 90% of the climate change adaptation measures are developed by local and regional government. That means that it's a totally regional development of this kind of actions. And we have to say that more than 70% of the European Union rules and action and legislation is carried out by regional governments. 1/3 of the public spending and more than 2/3 of the public investment is made up by regional governments. So without regions, Europe cannot be developed and could not be constructed. The global of trying to achieve neutrality, climate neutrality by 2050 must be worked in collaboration with regions and with the support of the regions. So the state resiliency and recovery plans represent a great opportunity to harness multi-level governance in this sense. And we think that these measures, the measures already established, have to be done fully involving the regions, the regional governments, in the definition and execution of plans, and of course, granting the regions direct access to these European Union funds. We have already worked a lot in this network, and we have accelerated all the implementation and allocation of 2030 agenda, strengthening the territorial approach of how we work and promoting actions, not only isolated actions in each region, but contributing to develop all these kind of actions all over the network. So instead of working isolatedly, we work in a network, and this is the way I think that we have to continue working in Europe. And again, Europe has to be constructed on regions, and I think that our network could be a great example to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your turn, Mrs. Auer. Yes. Unfortunately, we have another technical problem. We cannot hear Mrs. Auer. Mrs. Auer, can you try again? So I have a suggestion. While the technician helped Mrs. Auer to solve her problem, Mrs. Tapia, why don't you tell us a bit more details about this partnership through regions, because Spain is itself a partnership and at the end. And can you actually nurture this experience and bring it to Europe? And do you use this at the central government discussion, and can you export it when you deal with other regions in Europe?
Okay, I have to say that the working of the regions in the state, in the Spanish state, is great, and sometimes we have different kinds of approaches because depending on the way we are working, on the sectorial area we are working, regions are a key factor in order to establish new rules, to establish new political agenda. But we feel that sometimes when trying to connect to the European Union, even if we have this committee of the regions, sometimes states are in a better way to establish their political agenda, and the regions are part that have to be more important than we are today. So even if we have already some kind of, say, networks in each state, beyond the states, we have to work together as we are doing in this kind of, or in this network, because sometimes regions all over Europe are different. And we can feel that, for instance, in the Basque region, from the industry point of view, from the environmental, say, involvement, we are closer to Catalonia and we are closer to Baden-Württemberg than we are to other regions in Spain. So we can tackle with both challenges, working together in the state, but working above the states and trying to go to Brussels, going to Europe directly in some aspects is better for us than doing through the states. And I was telling that for instance, with these recovery funds, it could be great, as the president told us in the last meeting in the Committee of the Regions, that Europe grows on our regions.
Thank you very much. Now we have Mrs. Au again. Your turn, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties there. Can I say that I totally agree with the points that my colleague has made there about the importance of the states and regions in tackling sustainability in some both very practical ways and actions, but also in terms of their ability to set the agenda for countries across the world. In some ways, I think that the governance of states and regions, the fact that we are dealing with smaller populations, the fact that government is closer to the people makes it easier to develop progressive actions. And certainly we can see from a UK context, even when at a UK level, the Secretary of State went to present to the United Nations the Voluntary National Review on Progress Against the SDGs. He even acknowledged that actually both Wales and Scotland, as part of the UK, were taking much greater action. And I think it's so important for us to be thinking about those very practical actions that we can take. So when we think about states and regions being responsible for a number of the key areas which will drive action on reducing emissions, action on reducing poverty and so on. So the likes of education, the likes of making sure that we've got skills fit for green industries of the future, making sure that we're reducing our transport emissions, emissions from local manufacturing, and indeed emissions from housing, and so on. All of those levers tend to rest with the states and regions, and therefore we have a significant opportunity to take action. I also think it's important to recognise that climate change, for example, knows no boundaries, and so therefore learning from each other is absolutely crucial in meeting the challenges that we are collectively facing. And certainly in terms of my advice to our government in Wales, I am drawing from examples, the best examples from across the world for us to use and embed in Wales in our legislation. And the final point that I want to make really is that I think that often the progressive nature of the states and regions really can set a pathway for national and indeed international governments to follow. So as an example, in Wales back in May, we published a 10-point plan around responding to the climate emergency and a 5-point plan around COVID recovery. And at UK level, just this week, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has adopted large chunks of that plan, which was actually made in Wales. So I think that, if we are collectively coming together, sharing our ambitions, our aspirations, sharing the practical details of our actions, then I think there's a huge possibility for states and regions to really be the absolute key players in ensuring that we meet those UN SDGs.
This is really interesting. Thank you so much, Mrs. Owe. And now let me ask a question to Mrs. Subira, Mr. Fanner, and Mr. Untersteller. Your three regions are, together with Lombardy, members of the Four Motors for Europe network. That is one of the first networks in Europe. It was founded in 1988, if I'm not wrong. So how, in these last 30 years, the development approach changed, and what does it mean today to achieve or to work for achieving a sustainable development for a highly industrialized region like each of your region? And last, how it can, partnering with the companies, industrial factories, businesses, stakeholders can boost this sustainable development.
Marta, do you like to start?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. As you know, Catalonia is a rather small jurisdiction. It's 32,000 square kilometers with over 7.5 million inhabitants, but with a long-standing industrial tradition and strategically important agricultural and livestock sector and a powerful tourism industry, which has made Catalonia the leading logistics infrastructure in the Mediterranean. Given these social and economic characteristics, I am sure you can imagine the considerable challenges we face in so far as the environment, water and waste management, biodiversity conservation, and climate change are concerned. This is something that is dealt with rigorously. Over recent years, we have worked to develop different global policies, such as the Strategy for Promoting Green and Circular Economy of Catalonia, approved in 2015, the General Program for the Prevention and Management of Waste and Resources, the Catalan Ecodesign Strategy, which has held many specific associated instruments, such as the promotion of best available techniques, the production of new guides for suppliers in green public procurement, actions to prevent food waste, and collaboration with benchmark international institutions such as the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I also wish to mention that 2018 saw the launch of Catalunya Circular Catalonia, an innovation hub and meeting point for numerous companies and bodies with which we collaborate closely and that bring solutions and strategies for implementing and consolidating circular economy. This is an initiative for joint action by two ministries of the government of Catalonia, involving the collaboration of a host of social and economic stakeholders in Catalonia. It currently has 130 public and private best practices. And the Ministry of Territory and Sustainability has worked in close conjunction, as I said, with the Ministry of Business and Knowledge and the production of the National Agreement for Industry, particularly on Core Area 6 regarding sustainability and circular economy. This core area, in fact, comprises 11 actions grouped together in different lines and is expected to receive a budget of 150 million euros up to 2020 for sustainability and circular economy measures, and a further 350 million euros in resources from other administrations and from the private sector. Also, the Interdepartamental Circular Economy Commission has also been meeting since 2012 and has the goal of maximizing the transfer of knowledge between the two ministries and therefore of boosting collaboration in actions implemented by each unit. We are currently working actively to produce the roadmap of Catalonia, of circular economy in Catalonia, that brings together a structure and coherent synthesis of the efforts being made by different ministries and stakeholders and shows the way to go. This roadmap will thus establish shared milestones with which to direct the efforts of all ministries in the same direction, as well as flagship projects to lead change. This coordinated strategy will give us a better return on the work undertaken by each party and will draw attention to us internationally, we hope. The current challenge is to work on an inclusive circular economy. The COVID pandemic is helping us to underline the importance of social issues as a crucial pillar of sustainable development. Circular economy must be deployed with care for transition effects and convert them into opportunities so that no one is left behind, to encourage green inclusive jobs and the change in mindset, etc. There is a danger of prioritizing economic growth over and above environmental and social issues. Systemic perspectives should thus be included in all decisions and actions. And finally, I would like to stress the tireless political will and continued commitment of the four motors of Europe to working together, either by raising our voice on and advocating carbon neutrality and circularity, or by developing projects such as the Interreg Europe CIRCE project, European Regions Towards Circular Economy. This has been undergoing since 2017 and has shown us that circular industrial ecosystems must be created on a European scale, as European industry is highly interlinked and value chains distribute across both national and regional borders.
Thank you very much.
Virginie?
Mrs. Fanner?
Est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Well.
Oui, très bien. Le sujet d'hydrogène.
The subject of hydrogen, it's a subject that we develop at regional level in our industrial relationships with both economic and industrial actors.
and also in development and cooperation framework within the four motors of Europe. Why hydrogen? Well, our region of Regione has to undertake important challenges with an important level of air pollution and a high level of concentration of CO2 in urban areas. Our goal is to get to a decrease of 43,000 tons a year, increasing green mobility. Our region also has a specific. Indeed, 80% of French value chain is located in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and it's also the first producing renewable energy region, thanks to hydroelectricity. Since 2017, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes has also tried to deploy hydrogen-based mobility to light vehicles mobility. The project Zero Emission Valley should allow to build a large infrastructure to deploy a fleet of 1,000 light vehicles and to improve the fleet and mobility based on hydrogen. The goal is to industrialize new hydrogen batteries in a joint venture project. We also envisage to pursue new usage with new hydrogen trains, hydrogen boats, and also using hydrogen in mountain slopes. We want to develop hydrogen with 4 different pillars. The first is the market development with the production in the use of the green hydrogen. The second pillar, research and innovation throughout the value chain. The third is the creation of the hydrogen campus just to implement training programs, and the fourth is based on the increase of a European cooperation within the Four Motors network. Thank you.
Untersteller.
Thank you. Giuliano, you talked about the Four Motors. It was founded in 1988. So it's running since 32 years now. And tomorrow afternoon we will have the next meeting, and that shows how important this network is just still today. Yeah. And to your question, Baden-Württemberg's businesses. You know, maybe some of them like Bosch, like Daimler, like Porsche, like others, you know, Trumpf as a machinery industry, and there are a lot of more, and they are all very known for their innovative spirit and for their high performance. But many are also making impressive contributions to sustainability, also due to our business initiative for sustainability. Since 2010, now 10 years ago, the Business Initiative for Sustainability involves businesses as an important target group in our sustainability strategy. And its mission is to pool the experience and knowledge of sustainability committed companies, and together with the state government, define success factors for sustainable management. Businesses and consumers are becoming increasingly aware of the limits of our natural resources and are concerned about the risks posed by climate change. Therefore, sustainability and climate protection have become key success factors for companies. Companies need an effective way to develop reliable and effective structures for sustainable management. Baden-Württemberg has responded to this need with the so-called WIN Charta. It's written W-I-N Charta in 2014. The WIN Charta is an easily implemented, transparent sustainability management system that is tailored to small and medium-sized enterprises. The 12 guiding principles of the Wind Charter define entrepreneurial fields of action in the following areas. First, human rights, social and employee matters. Second, environmental issues. Third, benefits for the economy. And fourth, sustainable and fair finances, anti-corruption. And last, fifth, benefits for the region. Baden-Württemberg is the only federal German state with such a program. By signing the Wind Charter, companies commit to economic, ecological and social responsibility. It is an excellent way to make sustainable management a permanent part of an economy's mission statement and a strategy. 38 companies signed the Wind Charter for the first time in May 2014. Today, 230 companies are part of the Wind Charter network and rising. Sustainability and entrepreneurial success are not contradictions, but necessary prerequisites for the future viability of our society and economy.
Thank you very much. And now I heard that Mrs. Lucchesi can finally join us, though only with a telephone. Bonjour, Madame Lucchesi, can you hear us? And do you think that it's more useful to have a legislation to achieve these goals, or maybe regions should push and find innovative tools for sustainability? Madame Lucchesi?
Communication is undeniable. Partnership, cooperation, coordination, governance between stakeholders are essential to take ownership and to territorialize the SDGs. We are now at 5 years of the existence of this agenda. My remark is bitter. The SDGs are not yet sufficiently known by citizens, elected officials, young people, civil society actors, and they are often misunderstood. They are seen as an additional constraint and not like a help in approaching the problems as a whole. Since 2015, our region, from the adoption of the 2030 Agenda in continuation with the goals for the millennium, saw the SDGs as an opportunity to steer its public policies and, first and foremost, its international policy. Regarding the tools which we implement that you asked me, we have tools of two kinds. One, we are developing educational tools for an ownership of the SDGs by international actors, because the 2030 Agenda is a universal roadmap aimed both at northern and southern countries. The challenges are the same for all countries, even if the expectation levels are different. The stakes are shared by all, which increases the interest of international cooperation. Some examples of these educational actions. Regional meetings in the field of cooperation and international solidarity, which have been dedicated to the SDGs since 2015. It is a time for reflection, for exchanging experiences, dedicated to the challenge of the international development and cooperation. For 4 years, these meetings have been the place where they have explained over and over again the 2030 Agenda and to show the SDGs interactions between subjects, actors, to promote integration, highlight the link between local and international levels, promote innovative practices. Every year the theme changes, but always responds, or better said, corresponds to an SDG. Last year it was the international cooperation and solidarity in the face of the challenges of the climate change. In 15 days, the meeting will have the theme Education for All for the first time as a webinar. We have produced an exhibition presenting and explaining the 17 SDGs in partnership with the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs and the United Nations Development Programme that we make available to the structures of the territory. We have just acquired the ODD exhibition produced by the Good Planet Foundation in association with the Canopy Network. We will present it soon in the premises of the region open to the general public. Then it will be made available to all high school from the region. The goal is that all high school students see it by the end of 2021. We produce and distribute a document about the SDGs. For each SDGs, there is a presentation of the key facts and figures, targets, as well as indicators from the UN, the EU, and the French National Statistics Institute. The document is updated every year. This year, it will integrate the impacts of COVID-19 on the achievement of each of the SDGs. We also organize a sort of festival of solidarity, a regional tour of shows dedicated to the SDGs. The tour is postponed to November 21. We have exchanges around the energy transition with the Rhineland-Palatinate. We also want local actors, associations, different stakeholders to integrate SDGs in their cooperation and solidarity programs. Project leaders wishing to benefit from regional aid can respond to a call for international solidarity projects, and they must integrate SDGs in their projects to assess and demonstrate their contribution to the 2030 agenda. For the same purpose, we have entered into a partnership with 2 agencies of water to provide local actors with a financial mechanism aimed at supporting projects of international solidarity in the field of water and sanitation. This requires a contribution to several SDGs. These are just examples of what we are trying to do to present and educate people about the awareness of SDGs in our region.
Madame Lucchesi. And now this brings us to the end of this very interesting session. We have learned that European region can help to achieve sustainable development. And I just took a few notes. To take decision today should not compromise tomorrow, and having an independent commissioner helps. Decentralization helps to put together different needs of a diversified region, but also we can't forget that growth has to be at the basis of this new competitive model, and sustainability boosts growth. We have seen participation helps and coordination as well, but also we need to be transparent. And regions, as Mrs. O said, with the example of Wales, can really set up a path also for central government, as Boris Johnson did with COVID. With this, I want to thank all our guests and give the floor to Assessore Cattaneo, the Regional Council of Lombardy for Environmental and Climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you to chair this session. And first of all, let me say thanks, really thanks to all my colleagues, my friends from many different regions. Let me point out just briefly 3 points. First, sustainable development is clearly a common goal for our regions, a clear political target. And I found a lot of similarities in the action we are sharing in this field. Many differences, but a lot of similarities. So, second, regions are aware and have a clear idea of the importance of the role as key players we can play in this path to sustainability. Sometimes as an example for our national states, as one of you said before. And third, cooperation among us add value to our actions. So we have to improve our cooperation. Tomorrow afternoon we will have a meeting of the environmental ministers of the four motors. And I'm sure with Arancia Tapia, we will follow the cooperation among the regions for sustainable development network. But we need to improve our cooperation. And last but not least, we ask for a better, a stronger role in Europe. For instance, in the decision of the targets of the Next Generation EU Fund and the European Recovery Plan and the European Green Deal. Regions must be more protagonists in the future of Europe, looking to sustainability. This is my briefly conclusion of this session. Thank you really once again. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to Sophie Ho. Thank you to Liliane Lucchesi. And finally, we were able to listen to your contribution. Thank you to Virginie Farner. Thank you to Marta Subirà. Thank you to Arancia Tapia. And thank you to Franz Untersteller. I just regret to not be able to have the possibility to stay physically together, but I'm sure in the next future we'll be able to organize the second forum, regional forum on sustainability in Lombardy physically, and I wait all of you as host of Lombardy for the next forum. Thank you so much, and now let me switch to Italian for a brief general conclusion of this first morning of our Regional Sustainable Development Forum. Tornando all'italiano e brevemente concludendo questa interessantissima mattinata di lavoro, voglio ricordare che il nostro forum prosegue questo pomeriggio con 4 eventi tematici di profilo più tecnico, proseguirà domani mattina alle 9:30 ancora in plenaria, condividendo le esperienze degli attori che hanno sottoscritto il protocollo e di altri soggetti che stanno sviluppando concretamente azioni per la sostenibilità, e proseguirà ancora domani pomeriggio con altri eventi tematici e sabato mattina con la plenaria conclusiva. Vi invito sul sito di Regione Lombardia a guardare il dettaglio del programma e a continuare a seguire i nostri lavori. Abbiamo sentito questa mattina come il tema della sostenibilità sia il tema che sostiene il nostro futuro, ce l'hanno detto sia il Presidente Fontana che il Presidente Fermi che il Ministro Costa. Come diceva lui, dobbiamo guardare ai tanti impegni che ci aspettano anche nella prospettiva del 2050, dobbiamo guardare al futuro e capire cosa dobbiamo fare insieme. Questo è anche il nostro obiettivo, non tenere la testa voltata al passato, ma percorrere la via della sostenibilità come la via fondamentale del futuro. In questo ci ha ricordato Giovannini che è decisivo il tema della governance e il ruolo del livello locale, appunto. I progetti per la sostenibilità prendono forma, toccano terra a livello locale. Il presidente di Anci Lombardia Guerra ci ha ricordato come i comuni non vogliono essere solo attuatori, ma vogliono essere protagonisti. La stessa cosa che noi vogliamo come regioni a livello nazionale e a livello europeo. Per questo abbiamo bisogno di un percorso che parta dal basso e non ci veda solo come ricettori, ma come protagonisti. E questa volontà di protagonismo è la chiave per superare e non sprecare questa crisi. Come ci siamo detti durante tutta la giornata, la ripresa sarà tanto più solida quanto sarà sostenibile, quanto più sarà sostenibile non solo nel senso ambientale, ma anche nel senso economico e sociale. Ecco, la collaborazione fra di noi a livello regionale, a livello nazionale, a livello europeo e a livello globale è la condizione per dare forza a questo percorso verso la sostenibilità. Grazie per i tanti contributi che abbiamo ricevuto, grazie che è rimasto con noi fino alla fine, grazie a tutti coloro che hanno reso possibile, non è stato semplicissimo, lo abbiamo visto, svolgere questo forum in modo virtuale, ma mi sembra che con il contributo di tutti abbiamo comunque potuto condividere tante idee importanti. Proseguiremo nei prossimi giorni, state ancora con noi, grazie ai prossimi appuntamenti.